Good evening, ghouls. Cold open for me. Just wanted to say thank you. We're trying to get back onto a new schedule, so things are a little bit weird. We've missed a couple of weeks, more than a couple of weeks. I had my semester was wrapping up, and this one was a lot of work. So a lot of work towards the end that I was working on some projects. So not as much time to sit down and edit as I would like. Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks. We're getting back into the swing of things here with the new year. We might miss a couple of weeks here with Christmas and whatnot, but hopefully come January we'll be back to our normal schedule. And yeah, I just want to say thanks. Love you guys. Hopefully this isn't the last episode of the year, but if it is, we're excited to grow more and get some more content out there for you guys. So we love you, ghouls. Thank you. Good night or good morning, I guess.
Good evening, ghouls.
This thing's nicer than my apartment.
Stop.
No, we're not doing that right now. Good evening, ghouls. Welcome to
evening,
the drive
ghouls.
out. We just saw a movie, and now you get to talk about it with us as we drive home.
We watched The Boy and the Heron.
We did indeed. The new Studio Ghibli movie. And the last Miyazaki movie.
This time it's for real. This time it's for
he's for
real.
real,
He's
though.
actually going to retire after this one.
I feel like he might have to after this movie.
I mean, here's the thing with when you make art, you're living. And we talked about this a little bit on the way to the film or to the movie theater. When you make art your way of life, like when you make your creativity the thing that makes you like monetarily get by, it's very hard to retire from that because it's something that you learned to do out of a necessity. Like you are creative, you are a creative, and you will never stop being creative. So retiring from something like animation is going to be very hard because he's still going to have ideas as long as he lives. He's still going to have that desire to tell stories as long as he lives, and that's kind of what this whole the culmination, the Boy and the Heron being like the culmination of his life is that it's like semi-autobiographical, and so
true?
it feels like, yeah, I am fairly certain, right?
I don't see anything in the movie that suggested it, but I don't know if you saw something like outside
Like the
of the
trailers, I thought that was not the trailers, the PR before. It was like he's gonna release this film that's semi-autobiographical, and he isn't going to.
He can't be that old.
Is he not? Like born during the war?
How old would you say the kid is? Because he wasn't born during the war. He was
Right.
at least.
I don't know.
What, like 12, 10?
I thought
like
he was
that
like.
would put him at like a solid somewhere in his 90s right now, which is extremely old.
I don't know. I feel like he's always been old, so it just makes sense to me.
It does feel like he's looked exactly the way that he looks right now for like the entirety of my awareness of his existence. Longtime listeners may be aware that I'm a big animation fan. They might even be aware that I'm a Studio Ghibli fan. And I was really, really excited to see this movie. And I don't think it disappointed. I really liked this movie. Hot take.
I think
Is that a hot take?
devoid of context, this would be my favorite Ghibli movie. I think it's like the one that leans towards my taste the most. Of course, I cannot remove the context in which I saw Spirited Away and my relationship with that movie, and just like the place that it holds in my heart. But I think that aesthetically, this movie is easily my favorite.
I think it's a very similar storytelling style that he's explored in the past, especially with I would say his two most successful films are probably Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away. And both of these are kind of like Alice in Wonderland, somewhat normal person. I guess Howl's Moving Castle is a little bit different almost, because the world is technically magical from the jump, but she is not a part of that magical world when she starts, she's just making hats in a normal town. Anywhoosies. they it's a similar story. It's a similar style of storytelling where it feels very like a fairy tale, where like the rules are just kind of made up and everybody talks about them as though they always existed, or like as if they make sense, even though they don't. You know, you have this normal character who's very driven to find someone or to return to what they once had or who they once were. I think that the important difference here is that the animation has a huge leap forward, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Studio Ghibli movies have always looked fantastic, but there were several sequences in this movie that just fucking wowed me. And the ones in particular that I'm thinking of, or that really grabbed me, the first is when Mahito is running to the hospital fire, and like all of the people around him are kind of like
smoky.
Yeah, they're like they
like
feel like they're
distorted.
born of the fire almost.
Yeah.
Like it's like a purgatory scene that he's
Everything's very
running
fluid
through.
and like very vaporous. Like,
Yeah.
The way everyone's moving.
It's so that was very striking and extremely technically difficult. The next one that really grabbed me is after one of his first experiences with the Heron. He like falls into the pond, and as he starts like drifting upward through the pond, the camera changes angles and he's in his bed, and rather than rising up through the pond, the water level in the quote-unquote room is dropping to reveal the bed that he's lying in, if that makes sense.
And you can still see it,
And
like,
you can see the water
going
like
away.
pulling out from like the edges of like the frame, you know? That was just really technically like, oh man, just very, very impressive. And then not at all technically. I mean, like it's obviously it's impressive, but not nearly as difficult was one of the first scenes where he's like for sure in like the Twilight world or like the world of the dead, and he sees that kind of parade of ships on the horizon with like the sun peeking through the clouds, which is not at all the same level of like movement or anything near the first two scenes that I just referenced, but it really struck me. Like I don't know, the what I was thinking while watching the movie is that this movie watches like how poetry reads, you know, like a big part of being able to let yourself enjoy poetry, especially more modern poetry, is to understand that like words have their own value devoid of their meaning. Like there's like a zest or like an energy, like a movement to words and language on the written page that doesn't exist in other mediums. And a lot like large sequences of this movie or like abstract painting, for example, like abstract art is often a celebration of the medium as a means to its own end rather than to depict something else, you know, where it's like just painters having fun with paint in a way that they enjoy. And large parts of this movie for me personally, there were points at which they weren't so much the emphasis was not to tell a story, but rather to really just revel in animation, like the craft of it, you know, just kind of swim in that sauce. And I can totally understand if that wouldn't appeal to some, but I just really, really enjoyed it.
And I think that's interesting that you mentioned that because, and maybe I haven't seen enough Miyazaki films. I've kind of seen like the core ones, but I'm not really, I'm not a Miyazaki scholar like a lot of people try to at least pretend they are anyways. But I felt like this movie was kind of really stripped back in a lot of key ways. You know what I mean? Because I feel like if you like think about like Howl's house or like the bathhouse, like it's just very busy, and I felt like there was a lot less busy, which is good. Like I like that, to be clear. Like I think that's cool and it's fun and like all the little details are great. And I felt like this one, in like the key areas of the story, was more stripped back in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like the room where he's talking to his granduncle or great uncle, whatever, was like just like light, you know what I mean? Like it's just like him and his uncle, and like I don't know, there was a lot of places where like it was like a beautiful scenery and it was just him walking across, you know what I mean? And it was like a little bit more reserved in certain places.
Like the delivery room was like just the bed and then the fans.
Exactly. There was a lot of like very like I don't know. I think the most striking like image in the entire movie for me was right after he had smashed his head with the rock, and he like turns, and you have the side profile of him just like bleeding, and he just puts his hat on, and it's just like him on a blue sky background, and like maybe a little bit of like scenery on the bottom, um, and I felt like there was a lot of moments like that where it was just like quieter. You know what I mean? And I think like actually like physically quieter too. I don't know if you guys felt like, because I feel like a lot of other movies, like there's always a song playing in Miyazaki films. But in this one, like I feel like there was like just like silence for really long periods of time.
Put a pin in that, and I don't want to like take you off your point, but I want to talk about the music.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can go there right now.
We have to do a summary, right?
There's also a point to your point that I want to make.
But yeah, I just felt like in general, I think everything was stripped back a little bit, especially the music, which I really enjoyed the music. I think it might be my favorite score because of how like simple and like, I don't know, it was most of the time it was just a piano, it felt like, and like the voices occasionally for like the really like intense parts. But yeah, I don't know. The music was, I thought it was lovely, and I thought it was very well, like, because at the end of the day, Alice in Wonderland stories are coming of age, leaving adolescence behind, and like taking that step towards adulthood.
Making sense of the bizarre.
Yeah, exactly. This crazy, cruel world, and like becoming okay with it and trying to learn. Like when the mom was like, he was like, "But you're gonna die in the house fire," and she was like, "Fire doesn't scare me," or whatever she said.
And I'm going to love having you. Yeah.
Exactly.
That made me cry.
Me too. Immediately, I fucking tears, dude. It was so powerful. But yeah, we can talk about the music, and I guess we do need to do a summary, a quick one.
Can I do the summary?
Yeah, go ahead.
And man, I'm worried this is going to lead into more discussion before I do the summary, but I know I'm going to forget it if I don't say it now. There were certain points where the kind of visual maximalism of like Howl's Moving Castle or Spirited Away did creep through, specifically when he first enters the watchtower with the Heron, and it's kind of like that dilapidated library,
Oh, it's so fucking good,
and also when he's in Kiriko's house, like with like her table and like all her little knickknacks all over. That one in particular almost looked like the living room in Howl's Moving Castle.
Mm-hmm. That was like another point I wanted to make.
Throw all the stuff off the table so that they can have a place to eat, like type stuff, But yeah.
That was something I wanted to talk about too. It's really short. Just the fact that like you can see all of the other movies in this movie.
Yeah.
The hearth looked like Calcifer's hearth. There was a stained glass window that looked like the pinwheel.
Like
Two of the old ladies. One of the old ladies looked like Yubaba. One looked like the Witch of the Waste. And other old ladies from other Ghibli films. And there was a ton of that. Like so much, like visual calling back to previous films.
Which is, I kind of think, one of the reasons why I think this might be his actual last one. But yeah, let's do the summary.
I think very intentionally the last one, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he released another one.
Yeah.
So, we are in World War II. Our hero, Mahito, is a young boy who's woken up in the night to find that the hospital that his mother works in is burned down. We do a bit of a flash forward or skip forward in time, and Mahito and his father have met Natsuko, I believe is her name, who is going to be Mahito's father's new wife and his new mother, and is actually the sister of the mother that he lost. So
His
Natsuko
aunt.
was previously his aunt, but is now becoming his mother. And Japan, especially in this period, I mean, like, I don't know shit, because I haven't been to Japan. I don't know many Japanese people, but as far as I'm aware, especially in this period, Japan or Japanese people often have very reserved emotional expression, and like there's like, but there's like, I don't know, you can tell that there's a very like a rigidness, a formalness like between Mahito and this new mother figure, and in very quiet moments we can tell that he's deeply unhappy to have lost his mother. The adults in his life may not have taken the care that they have to ensure that like his grieving process is happening the way that it should, because we're in the middle of a war. There's a lot happening. And his new mother, Natsuko, is obviously trying to reach out to him with varying levels of success. Mahito and his father move into... I really still don't really understand their situation with like the traditional house and like the modern house like next to each other, or why they have that, or like
I think it's just like
what the
family
ladies
house.
are to him. Like, I don't know if they're like the mother's portion of the family is like old style Japanese nobility of some kind, or I'm not really sure.
That's the vibes I got. I don't think that like it's very important. But that's the vibes that I got too.
Yeah.
It was just like that she was wealthy. These were, excuse me.
But like old money,
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
new money. You know what I mean?
Exactly, because these women have worked there for 60 years.
They raised them.
and raised
It's like an
them,
estate
yeah.
rather than like a new home, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. As the boy moves in, there's this Heron that keeps acting strangely, and the longer he's in the home, the more like this kind of bizarre other world seems to seep into what's going on. The Heron keeps claiming that it is a guide who is trying to reunite Mahito with his mother, who he initially claims isn't actually dead. We find out that the Heron is extremely fickle. It's actually kind of like a spirit creature that kind of like goes back and forth between a physical, actual, real life heron and a kind of man in a heron costume, for lack of a better word. But Mahito slips into this spirit world where his great granduncle is trying to groom him as a successor to rule over this spirit world. However, the spirit world is undone by Mahito's actions and the actions of other people that inhabit that world. In the spirit world, he is primarily trying to rescue his new mother, Natsuko, with the help of a girl named Himi, who is implied and then confirmed towards the end of the movie to actually be his mother. But the spirit world time doesn't work correctly there. His mother slipped into the spirit world when she was a child, and so their existences in the spirit world are overlapping with one another despite being separated in real world by actual time. And then at the end of the movie, he is reunited with his father, and obviously has been able to process the death of his mother and has accepted Natsuko as his new mother.
We see his little brother at the very end.
Oh man,
'Cause
just a little
Natsuko
unit.
was pregnant this whole time.
Oh yes, Natsuko was pregnant this whole time. But yeah, I would say
Presumably with his father's child.
yes.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's like
His-
we don't know how long it's been since his mother died.
It was
or
a
if there was like
year.
an affair. Okay, it was
Yeah.
a year. Okay, so I was like, because I kind of got like weird. I was like, was this like an affair type deal? Like, were they seeing each other before, or was it
No,
like?
I think that's another thing with I don't know, I could be absolutely wrong. I know in older, like not even just Japan, but like in older, like previous generations of people, it's been less problematic to get with someone else's. Like it's almost expected that like if I
you
mean
take
it says
care of
that
them.
it says that in like scripture is that like if your wife dies then marry her sister, or if your husband dies marry his brother, like because you need a protector, you need someone to complete that unit. So a lot of people did do that, and I think it was just expected that like once the mother died, the sister is single, there you go, and then they have to keep the family together. So then he has I would say like a 75% sibling, because the moms were
Yeah, that's kind
sisters.
of weird.
But he's a baby,
He's
and then they have
very fucking
literal
cute.
babies that are just this movie's Soot Sprite, and they are the Wada Wada. They are
Wada Wada.
so cute.
I looked over at Alec when they came on. I was like, these things are Becca Core. Just like literal blobs with two dots and a smile. Like a
And they've
curve.
got
just dropped,
little nubby arms and legs, and then they turn into Kirby and then fly away.
Yeah.
Not to go back on something from earlier, but you talked about the music, and I'm interested by your opinion because I actually thought that the music was one area in which this movie didn't excel over Spirited Away or Howl's Moving Castle. Um, specific like thematically, if he wanted to kind of strip back this movie in general, I think that that makes sense. But where I think Hell's Moving Castle and Spirited Away may have outdone this movie's score is that they had very they have themes that you could
Recognizable,
like
yeah.
that you can like the
There was a theme in this one, but
or
the theme was not as good.
like there's like very recognizable
Yeah.
melodic motifs, whereas this it was just kind of like gentle arpeggiation. Like it was beautiful, it was well written and well composed, but I think it had the music, in my opinion, had less of a distinct character in this movie and was used more as like a brush to paint the background with than it was in other movies.
Sure, yeah. I kind of like that though, personally, because like I don't know, it felt like the what was happening on the screen was like the main character. You know what I mean? Which I really appreciated. Um, I also really liked how I felt like, and maybe this is just recency bias, but I felt like the characters were often really small in the frame, um, compared to like other movies or like traditional like the characters kind of filled the frame up in this one, but I feel like this one, like the world was so vast and like Miyazaki kind of zoomed out a little bit because I think the story is about a kid who's lost, trying to find his way back home. You know what I mean? And so like when you pull out and like make him so small on the screen, it just makes you like see like this big vast world that like children are about to become a part of as they get pass over from adolescence into like young adulthood and adulthood. And so I felt like that was something that was really cool, like just these big huge sets, because like I mean this is probably the biggest like setting, right? Like an entire like space-time continuum, like time warp, you know what I mean?
Maybe
Like
of the three that we've been talking about, but some of the earlier Ghibli movies had pretty big settings, like Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind
yeah. But
or Castle in the Sky.
but yeah, I really appreciated that aspect of it, just like feeling so small in this world.
What I was struck by through a lot of it, I know that I've already talked up the animation, but I've done literally the barest dipping of toes into animation by making little animated shorts for my brother's albums. Hashtag at Chase, I guess, or shout out Chase, I guess, on Spotify. But it's very hard. It's extremely labor intensive and time intensive. And so it makes sense when you watch other animated movies or shows, you can tell where they're pulling their punches so that they can kind of go ham in other places. And it really struck me while watching this movie that, like, man, they decide to do, like, at any given moment, they just decide what, like, the hardest thing would be to do at that time and do that. It's insane. like the mechanics of the bikes that they're doing, or like the motion of birds in flight, or even like that wooden stick falling apart after he like used it as a weapon on the heron, it would be so much easier and would tell a similar story to just cleave it in half, you know what I mean? And it'd be so much simpler to animate. And instead they disintegrate it into like tiny chips that each have to be reconciled with one another, they have to have their own like physicality, like they have to make sense, like they have to retain their shape no matter which perspective you see them through. It's it's just their dedication to the craft is insane.
Yeah.
As far as like the story itself goes, I thought it was really interesting, like that they have this world that is, like you said, just like space-time continuum, like crazy. The like there doesn't seem to be any actual like, I guess the fish might be like native to the world, like any endemic species, but then you have all the birds which were imported, like they didn't ask to be there, and they all wanted to kind of get out, and they couldn't, and then it ends up being the parakeets that didn't want to be there but have made a world there for themselves that try and like take it over. And honestly, like, I don't know. I feel like I need to watch it again to get a lot more like understanding of how the world worked. And like obviously there was symbolism from World War II with like the birds and their king, and like Nazism.
Yeah, parakeet fascism is
That was
wild.
crazy.
That was not on my bingo card
Yeah.
for this movie.
Well, and also like the displaced pelicans who were like
Yeah.
starving and yeah.
And they have to like that idea of like you have these beautiful wara wara which are like going up to become children, to become new lives, and then you have these pelicans that are coming in and it's the only thing they can eat. So it's like first you're really mad at the pelicans, and then you're like, wait, they didn't ask to be here. They're trying to survive. What do? You know, like it's just this, that's life, is that there's a circle. Like some things have to die to live, but then those things that are living are also going to die to something else that needs to live until we all just make it around, you know? But there's a lot more in this movie that I want to like, that's just like right there on the tip of my proverbial tongue, but I can't find the words. I just feel like I need to see it again to...
Gotta watch it in the
Yeah.
English dub this time.
Yeah, I accidentally got the sub. Sorry, guys.
Rip.
Rip. But yeah, good movie. Go watch it. Sick.
Anything else that we want to talk about? I think I hit the things that I wanted to say.
I got mine.
It was really pretty. It was
So
really
pretty.
emotional with the relationships between Mahito and his mothers and their relationship to each other. And then, yeah, like you said at the end, when his mom was like, it'll be worth it just to have you for as much time as I can. Like, I don't care that I'm going to die. Wild.
Yeah. Good
Where are
stuff.
we rating it on Letterboxd?
True.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Mine is at number 10. Under Barbie.
Wow.
It knocked off Truman Show.
Yeah, I have mine at number 10 as well. I have it right under Evil Dead and right above Spider-Verse, across the Spider-Verse rather. But I'm kind of waffling.
I got mine at number 8, just above the original Blade Runner and just below Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Although I could probably switch those two out. I'm not sure.
They're pretty, like, both of them, like, I feel like the Spider-Verse was more technically impressive, just because that's kind of like what it is. Whereas this one, I think, is a lot more emotionally impactful for me personally. But they're kind of different tones, too, you know?
And
So it's hard to compare.
Can we talk about the stylistic choice to have him, like, harm himself and then keep his head shaved for the rest of the movie?
Oh, yeah,
It's a really
So
good,
freaking dope.
specific look.
Yeah,
It's awesome. I
very
love
Especially
it.
because one of the weaknesses of Studio Ghibli style, in my opinion, is that a lot of the people look extremely similar.
Yeah.
And that did a really good job of really anchoring him as his own character in his own movie, but also visually distinct from the protagonists of other Studio Ghibli movies.
Yeah.
Period.
Good movie.
Very good movie.
Why would you say he hit himself with the rock when it happened? I know that he said out of malice.
I think he was trying to make it so he didn't have to go back to school. So he told his father the very obvious lie, like, no, I just fell, like, because he knew his father was going to go back to the school and be like, my kid's not coming in. Like, he's not going to go to school. He didn't want him to go back because his dad is assuming that someone did it to him. So but he didn't want to outright, like, if he came home and was like, somebody did this to me, then it wouldn't be like an outright, like give away, like, hey, I did this to myself because I don't want to go to school. But for him in his mind, it's a more like he's not lying. He is lying because he said, I took a stumble. That's not what happened. But he's not lying to make it on another person directly, if that makes sense. I think it's a very complex reason, but that's what I understood.
And prepare for smug looking Twitter or YouTube personalities to be like, actually, none of this even happened. It's just a head injury that he gave himself, like as if that matters or as if that's clever. You know what I mean? Like, I have a particular distaste for it was secretly all a dream. You know what I mean? Like, fan theories. I don't know. Because, like, not only, like, it's fine, okay? I guess, like, if your theory...
It's like, sure, and obvious, and also obviously. Like, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's thinking it. Like, and that, like, yeah, I don't know.
If your theory doesn't change anything about how the movie should or is experienced, then, like, don't feel the need to share it. Like, it really doesn't fucking matter. But yeah. Good night, ghouls.
All right, ghouls. Love you.
Love you, bye.
Good night, goodbye. Fortnite battle bags.
Oh my God. What I gonna meet you? 'Cause I'm gonna get me. Fortnite battle bags.